What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, coming at you with another preview. I know, it's a surprise. No, it's not. Regular schedule. But this time, the Packers take on the Arizona Cardinals. And to go through that game with me is my lovely co-host, Jordan Chesky. Jordan, how are you doing, buddy?
Then well, let's I'm seeing red
You're mad? You're
because
that mad, huh?
no, the Cardinals are coming out of town.
The Cardinals is doing a little bit of reverse migration. I don't think that's how that works. Like you can migrate north too, but they the famously one way Wisconsin to Arizona pipeline around this time of year is coming back.
They're snowbirds, but they forgot where the snow comes from. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. Before we talk about the Arizona Cardinals matchup this Sunday, got hand out some cheeses for this past week's 24-19 win
Jesus.
over the Los Angeles Rams. Unlike the loss to the Minnesota Vikings, there is a loaded uh, cheese board this week. There's a bunch of charcuterie on this board with three needing to get highlighted. So let's go through those right now. First up is the man of the week. Been getting all the social media love. Well, should say almost all of it because the next guy got some too. But Tucker Kraft, 4 catches on 5 targets, 88 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. He shared the spotlight this week with Xavier McKinney, who had 3 tackles, 2 of which were solo, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, and 2 PBUs. Next up is Josh Jacobs, 19 carries for 73 yards and 1 touchdown, his first touchdown as a Green Bay Packer, and 1 catch for 21 receiving yards. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Next up is Jaden Reed. 4 catches on 6 targets, 78 yards, 2 carries, and 19 rushing yards. Kingsley Enagbare, 3 tackles, 1 of which were solo, 1 forced fumble, the one that Xavier McKinney had picked up, and a QB hit. Carl Brooks, 2 tackles, 1 of which were solo, 3 QB hits, 1.5 sacks, and 1 tackle for a loss. Edger Cooper, 5 tackles, 3 of which were solo, a sack, 2 QB hits. And then last up is Evan Williams, 10 tackles, 4 solo, and 2 PBUs, including the game sealing one on 4th down. Jordan, I don't know about you, but I have 2 locks.
Two
Almost,
locks for me too.
almost 3.
2 locks for me too.
Are they the top 2, Tucker Kraft and Xavier McKinney?
Yes, Tucker Kraft for sure. I forgot to include that he burned down 2 houses as well in that Rams win. That's a little
Children
joke.
not inside.
Children not inside. I love how that had to be
That had to be clarified.
clarified.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's an arsonist.
Did you see
And yeah,
before we continue? Did you see the Twitter edit of him with the there's the old meme picture. It's the little girl with the sly smile looking at the camera as the house is burning down.
I have not seen it, but I definitely thought that
Yeah,
would
someone
be
made that with Tucker Kraft as like the little
good.
girl in the foreground. But anyways, that
Good.
that was very funny. Anyways, go on.
Xavier McKinney, I mean, it's a
NFC
lock.
Defensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, you give someone, you give that a cheese. Come
Yeah.
on, you know.
I think for context, if he hadn't had the fumble recovery, I don't think I'd give him one. Just because like this is becoming the Giannis thing. Like how much do you reward Xavier McKinney for getting an interception every week? Does that make sense?
I do.
I mean, I understand that, but like, not having an IPO and things like that.
Mm,
I mean, I
mm,
I understand.
mm.
I mean, I know. Maybe we're getting spoiled already.
I'm not.
All right,
I'm gonna.
who is your candidate for the third cheese?
This is where it's really tough because
We can give up more than one more.
we can, but
I'm making that decree.
I am struggling for who would be the righteous third, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here
Okay, who are you in between?
because I don't know. I it's just like Josh Jacobs, solid game. I would say worthy of a cheese. Jaden Reed didn't get a touchdown, but you're looking at 97 total yards of offense.
I
Like,
think
and
for both of those guys, neither of them eclipsing 100 yards is the problem for me.
Yeah, I hate that round numbers have my brain this way, but
It's not even
there is
that like round
something.
numbers like have my brain but like 100 yards I think from scrimmage is like a good benchmark if you've had a good game or not.
Or if, yeah, 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 yeah,
And so
I
like
agree.
uh the per yardage or per the average per carry for Josh Jacobs isn't like super high. And we had talked
No,
about how it was kind of touch and not touch and go, but either a couple of big runs or it looked like he was having some trouble getting through some of the lines at times. And then Jaden Reed, like we've given him one cheese for a lot more, you know, like I think there's other more willing, more deserving players than those two this week, even though, like you said, they had good games.
and Barry obviously forced a fumble. Has continued to be like this super sub where he's not
Mm-hmm.
a starter, but his snaps is very productive, makes really game-changing plays. This is the second week of that, at least. Carl Brooks' PFF grade was really bad, but I don't really understand why
No, neither
outside
do I.
of the,
He
whatever.
might have
But
lost a lot of his other matchups and just had gotten home on a couple other ones.
yeah.
But
But
even then, a 1.5 sacks and a TFL and a couple hits, like you think it'd be a lot higher than that. It
yeah,
had to been really bad to receive that grade.
Edgerrin Cooper, I mean, it, there's a reason why there's a lot of Packer people wanting more snaps for him because the more you see of him, the more the more productive he is, and like it just there's been that payoff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just like everybody feels like a B plus type game, and it's like which direction do you go? And other factor is this is not a very high scoring game for this team. This they really in some ways eked it out. The defense did save them.
Right.
So do you reward the defense with another cheese based on that logic? And then furthermore, for doing that like arrow chart where you just keep going questions,
Right.
who from the defense do you reward? Do you reward the guy that with the game winning pass breakup, or do you more lean more towards like the disruptive plays like Barry or Carl Brooks or even Edgerrin Cooper? So that's where I'm just kind of like torn between all these different candidates. Who are you leaning towards for third?
I was between Evan Williams and Edgerrin Cooper.
Hmm.
I know on Sunday I had a not so glowing talk about Evan Williams, but looking back at some of the tape and some of his stats and whatnot, I think he had a pretty darn good game and
Played a lot more than I thought
played
too.
a lot more than we
Uh,
thought. And in part due to Jair being out as well as
Yes.
no, just Jair. Um, but played really well and had a couple of big pass breakups that really matter. And I mean, 10 tackles at the safety position is pretty important. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
I think. Ah, man. I think I'm ready to give one to Edgerrin Cooper. We haven't given him one yet, right?
We are not.
I think he's ready for one. I think he's deserved one.
Interesting. Okay. I'm good with that. I will definitely do Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah, not to do what we did with the four the last couple of weeks or 2 weeks ago, be in the Titans game, I believe. But we'll see how Evan Williams does in the next couple of weeks, and if he keeps up this type of performance, and if he gets equal amount of playing time once Jair returns, uh, I could see him earning a cheese pretty easily. My main, not I don't want to say goal or anything, but like I think there is a avenue for Evan Williams to get more playing time, and it involves benching one of the corners in favor of him and moving Bullard up to slot corner. Put Evan Williams back there, but we'll see. Between
Hmm.
Valentine, you can't really bench Stokes, but Valentine, Nixon, or maybe Stokes. Um, I think Evan Williams is going to force Halfley's hand to give him some more playing time if you were to
Yeah.
ask me. So, all right, those are the three: Tucker Kraft, Xavier McKinney, and Edgerrin Cooper. Thank you all for enjoying some tasty cheeses this week. You definitely have earned it. So, with that being said, let's get into some of the news for the week. First and foremost, behind Tucker Kraft being all over social media, Romeo Dobbs has been the talk of 1265 Lombardi Avenue. Matt LeFleur's latest comments from Monday. This is quote: "The one thing I'll say about it is it's a pretty isolated incident. This has not happened with him before, and I don't expect it to happen moving forward." Since then, Dobbs has practiced on Wednesday and Thursday. If you are chronically online like I am, you saw um, Matt LeFleur dap up Romeo Dobbs during practice on Wednesday, and people were trying to make anything out of it as if they know anything about their relationship. So I'm not giving any stock into that. Um, Matt Schneeman wrote an article for The Athletic talking about all of the welcomes and how players reacted and things like that. So I'll go give that a read if you want. But Jordan, what's your latest on Romeo Dobbs?
I'm gonna say Christian Watson's quote, which I thought was very interesting. Um, Again, per Matt Steeman's article. I think 2 days is going to ruin the 3 years of work and commitment he's put in for us, said Watson, who was drafted to the Packers with Dobbs in 2022. It'll definitely be a little weird right away just because it was a pretty significant situation for him. But I mean, he's roamed to us. I think it'll blow by pretty quick. And we'll all be right back to how we were. There'll be there'll probably be a few bumps in the road trying to get that togetherness and that family feeling back. But at the end of the day, he's back in the building. I know that his goal is to win a football game this week. Um, Also, I just want to mention that Matt LaFleur's comment could have easily been the Bayshore Parker's comment about it's just an isolated incident.
It's just an isolated incident. It's not going
Just
to
an
happen
isolated
again.
incident. This is never going to happen again. This has not happened with him before, and I don't expect it moving forward. So
That's funny.
Bayshore Parker, Matt LaFleur are the same person apparently.
That is funny.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the natural conclusion of whatever the hell has happened. I think miscommunication. It's clear. It's not the first rodeo with a Packers player where they kind of had to rein things in based on how things were communicated. Um, is it a harbinger of things to come? Does that mean Romeo Dobbs is getting traded in the next couple weeks? No. And if it does, I'll eat my hat. I don't know. But it's just I didn't think for as kind of significant and as long-winded as our discussion was the other day, there's still not that much for us to go through. The people that have to deal with it are the people that the 52 other people in the locker room, plus practice squad guys, and the coaching staff, the front office. I don't really care. I don't like in terms of like needing the details of the, and we know them reportedly, but I don't need like the blow by blow of this is what happened, this is how he reacted, and yada yada yada. It's like it feels like something just we've all had those moments of maybe not reacting to a situation well and taking things to a degree that we didn't anticipate doing. But yeah, I think things will blow over. Cooler heads have obviously prevailed. Romeo Dobbs is going to be expected to play this week, and the Packers will be better for it because he's that vital to what they hope to achieve this year, and as long as he's in Green Bay.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Don't really need the blow by blow. Like, as much as it would be entertaining for a couple days, it wouldn't be beneficial for that to be aired out publicly and for fans to sort of hop on, uh, not the bandwagon, but just hop on and keep bashing Romeo Dobbs for whatever the reason may be, or bashing the franchise
Yeah,
for whatever the reason may be. And so, or the coaches, whoever, like, there's nothing good to come out of getting the play by play of why Romeo Dobbs uh, sat out of practice last week and got suspended for a game. So, yeah, I think glad it's over. Glad he's back at practice. I think he's gonna have a big week. Frankly, getting back at it, I hope he has a big week, and sooner that this is behind the Packers, the better. IMO.
Yeah.
So, um, for context, I was curious is because I thought it was coming up. Trade deadline isn't until November 5th, so it's about a month away.
Yep.
So, not that I anticipate Romeo getting traded or anything, but um, I always remembered it was earlier than I always think it is for the NFL. And
Well, that got moved back a couple years ago.
yeah, I think it was,
It used to be after week 6, and
which
then
would have
now
been
it's
this
after
week.
week 8.
Yeah, which would have been this
Yep.
week. I think it was new last year, right? Because I think the first year we had talked about it,
It,
um, our first season that we started doing Talk of Tundra, we had this exact conversation
yeah.
about how it was too soon
Too
in the
soon.
year. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
so after week 8, that's coming up. So, but yeah, with that, nothing more on Romeo Dobbs. So let's move on to some more news and notes. A lot of roster moves, I should say. I should say a lot, just like roster churn mostly. The Packers on Sunday, or I'm sorry, Monday, cut Robert Rochelle, freeing up a roster spot, and then promptly re-signed him back to their practice squad on
Welcome
Wednesday.
back, Robert.
I'm not entirely sure how that works because I thought you couldn't do that because because he was on the roster because he was on the practice squad and got elevated 3 times, and then they cut him. Now they signed him to their practice squad again. So I'm not sure if he gets 3 more elevations or how that works.
No, I believe that is what happened with Patrick
That's
Taylor.
where I was going with this, is that I don't know
Yes.
how this
So
works now.
if he would be brought up again, he'd have to get back on the roster spot or earn a roster
He had to
spot
have
again.
a roster spot and not just an elevation.
Yep.
Got it. And then his contract would be converted to whatever the minimum for whatever it would be, right? It'd be guaranteed or something like
Sti-
that. I forget what it is.
Something like that. Yeah.
But, but yeah, he's back on the practice squad. I think he had like a decent game his last couple of weeks, like on special teams for sure. So if we need him, so be it. Um, but yeah, welcome back, Robert Rochelle, after being cut for a day, not
Bobby.
moving out, and then back on the squad. Um, Today, Thursday, the Packers signed tight end John Fitzpatrick from the Falcons practice squad. Take that for taking Micah Abernathy 2 years ago, Falcons. Take that,
Jesus.
taking John Fitzpatrick. Per Adam Schefter, the move was most likely made with the fact that Luke Musgrave is likely headed to the IR. Matt LeFleur said this afternoon that he's dealing with an ankle injury, or he had been dealing with an ankle injury, and he hopes to get him back sometime this season. So whether or not they do is a different question. But with Tucker Kraft obviously taking the next big step, Ben Sims being their third tight end, they need another one, and they grab John Fitzpatrick to replace him. So that's all there is about that. Uh, that's all there is for news. Moving on to the matchup with the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are 2-3 behind Kyler Murray and rookie wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. A bit of context on the seasons or the series history between the Packers and the Cardinals. Packers are 47, 24, and 4 in the last in 75 meetings against the Arizona Cardinals, 1 and 2 in the postseason. Their last meeting was in Arizona as the Packers beat them 24-21 on Thursday night football in week 8. That was the Romeo Douglas game, his coming out party for the team, interception to end the game, and a wave goodbye to the fans as the Packers got that win. The Packers' last game in Lambeau was back in 2018. This is the 20-17 win the Cardinals had. That was the the last nail in the coffin for Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. Ends up getting fired, I think, that day, if I'm not mistaken.
It
Um,
was hours after.
yep. And so that was the end of that run. So, and then obviously, Cardinals have significant history in the Packers playoff matchups. 1 and 2 against the Packers are against the Cardinals in the postseason, but the two that I remember. I can't place the third one, but the first one is in 2009, or yeah, that 2009 season when the Packers faced the Cardinals in the wild card in Arizona, and there was a face mask on Aaron Rodgers that did not get called, or vice versa. I forget how that worked. Um, but that was a big call, and the Cardinals won that game. And then the other one was the Jeff Janis and company. Uh,
He threw two Hail Marys that game.
I know when
Yeah.
Rodgers throws a Hail Mary from the end zone to the 50-yard line to Jeff Janis, catches it, go down, throws another Hail Mary to Jeff Janis in the end zone for a touchdown. I remember watching that game uh, in my room. When was that? 2018 or no 20? When was that?
January
26.
16th, 2016.
Yeah, so I would have been home for winter break over college. I was in my room at home watching him just throw this football, and then just the pure heartbreak of Larry Fitzgerald going for 70 yards before a shovel pass
Disgusting.
kills him. Yeah,
Just,
one of the most heartbreaking losses I've ever experienced. Just like
well,
the waves of emotion, one way to the other, were insane. But like I said, the Packers are coming are or sorry, not the Packers. The Cardinals are 2-3, coming off of a 24-23 win over the San Francisco 49ers in Week 5. Their previous win was a 41-10 ass kicking of the Rams in Week 2. So, getting into the matchup, the injury report a little bit more lengthy um, for the Cardinals this week than it was for the Rams last week. And then Packers are looking a lot better than it was last week. The Cardinals uh, had a Kelvin Beachum, their offensive lineman, is with a hamstring injury. He was limited in practice on Thursday. So was offensive lineman Evan Brown with his hamstring. He was limited. Zay Jones, their wide receiver, has a hamstring injury and he's also returning from a suspension. He was a full participant returning from his suspension on Wednesday, but then he had a new hamstring injury, which makes him limited on Thursday. Jesse Luketa, their linebacker, is limited. But Belial Nichols, their D lineman, has a finger injury. He is limited. Matt Prater, their kicker, has a left knee injury. He was limited. Darius Robinson, their D lineman, has a calf injury. He did not participate after practicing on Wednesday. And Garrett Williams, their cornerback, has a groin injury. He was limited as well. For the Packers, everybody was a participant except for Devontae Wyatt and obviously Luke Musgrave, as we talked about. Um, but still dealing with injuries are Jair with his groin, safety Zane Anderson, who was a full participant with an elbow injury, Kenny Clark with his toe, Adrian Cooper with a hip injury, Jonathan Ford still making his way back from a calf injury, coming back from IR, Elton Jenkins with a knee injury, Tucker Kraft had a groin injury that he suffered, I think, during Wednesday. It looks like during Wednesday practice, he was limited in practice. Jordan Morgan limited as well with his shoulder injury. Aaron Mosby with a shoulder injury as well, who was a full participant. Obviously talked about Luke Musgrave was a DMP today with that ankle injury. Zach Tom, full participant with a shoulder injury, and then Carrington Valentine, Christian Watson, and Devontae Wyatt uh, are all dealing with ankle injuries. Only Devontae Wyatt did not practice. Christian Watson limited, hoping to only miss one game with his ankle injury he suffered against the Vikings. So, all that being said, stinks that Luke Musgrave is going to probably have to go on IR. Also stinks that Devontae Wyatt is still likely going to be out for this week. He'll probably be out for this week, and I'd imagine next week as well. But um, having everybody else practice in some form is good for them, even if those two are out.
I would agree. They had the reinforcements, especially with Johnny Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
Uh, you sound very tickled there.
Johnny
Um,
Fitz makes it sound like you were like he's like Ryan Fitzpatrick's like brother.
I mean that is kind of the vibe that I thought he was, and then he looked like someone graduating from the Air Force.
Yes, yes he
Um,
does.
but yeah, I'm a relatively clean injury report, given that there's been a lot of guys in and out of the starting groups.
Yeah, it's long, but at least it's not like I don't want to say not serious.
It's not something that we're used to, or that we aren't used to, I should say.
Right. I think come today, as you're listening to this on Friday's injury report, we'll get a lot more, obviously, information. Excuse me. And we'll have a different like level of concern depending on what those designations for Sunday's game are. Like having Jair back would be probably pretty cool. That'd be appreciated. That's not like a dig at him, but he's been missed, I think, obviously. And then Christian Watson being back, that'd be pretty cool, just because that'd be a full complement of receivers, minus Luke Musgrave, but he's been kind of out of the offensive rotation at the moment. Um, Before he got hurt, and then just having everybody else back would be great. Like Jordan Morgan, if he somehow found a way to play, that'd be pretty cool, just to see what if he can get back into the rhythm of his rookie season. So here's to hoping that that injury report and the active player list on Sunday isn't as long as this injury report. So um, with that being said, let's go into what we're looking to watch for in this game. I think first and foremost, you got to start with their quarterback, Kyler Murray. Um, I was really annoyed coming into this game, Jordan, because Call of Duty Black Ops 6 comes out at the end of the month, and we're facing Kyler Murray before the new Black Ops comes out, which means he's going to be focused and ready to play versus all hopped up on Doritos and Mountain Dew and trying to get double XP for the new multiplayer.
Doing a
So
LAN party.
I know. So he's going to be playing football and not trying to think about how his Omni movement in Black Ops 6 is going to be affected. So
Enemy AC 130.
but yeah, Kyler Murray having a good season. Um, the pressure rate on Kyler Murray's dropbacks is 27.8, which is seventh best amongst quarterbacks, meaning he is not getting pressured very often. Um, Obviously, Kyler Murray is a threat to run. He's pretty darn good at tucking that ball and scrambling for yards. Elusive, I think, is not strong enough of a word to describe Kyler Murray. Um, Trying to. Oh, I'm sorry. So, with that being said, we're going to see similar packages that we saw against Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson this week against against Kyler Murray. I would almost assume, like, I think that's a pretty good assumption to make, given that that's just how they played two other scrambling run quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray is, I think, up there with like Lamar Jackson as the best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Second most scramble yards per PFF, only behind the rookie of the year presumed uh, guy, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think this is there are multiple parts of going into this game that worry me. Kyler Murray is certainly one of them, if not the biggest thing, just because one, he first fully healthy year from the ACL tear from a couple years ago. It felt like what he needed to do last year of like coming through mid-season. It was a lost year. That kind of helped him get like the growing pains out. Like you're playing a no stakes year kind of thing. And now with other additions to, his cast of weapons, he can be fully just himself,
yeah,
where he just makes plays. The ability, I think part of the pressure rate too, and thinking about it is just like, you know, it's one thing to get after him, but it's another thing to pressure him. But he can just bounce outside and make plays on the move, plays out of the pocket, obviously scrambling too. Like that's where it just the extending of plays. It's going to be very important for this Packers team to wrap up. Don't have any or limit as many mistakes that you have tackling the open field.
mm-hmm.
I think that is where the biggest concern I have with this Packers defense. They're making, even if it's Xavier McKinney, but by and large, they're getting turnovers. They're forcing turnovers that way. The defense is coming along in fits and starts in terms of just like what else is there. But you're not gonna be able to get after him the way that you did against Will Levis, obviously, or even Matt Stafford. Like
Right.
this is not a stationary quarterback.
No.
Then it's a matter of, well, you're gonna have at least one linebacker glued to him at all times, whether that's like a McDuffie or a Quay Walker, obviously Edgerrin Cooper. Then if he's scrambling outside the pocket, what does that do to your defense? Like there's just so many different ramifications of how Kyler Murray can just extend plays and test your defense when it's 3 seconds into a play, and then suddenly everybody's off script. Where do you go? What zone of the field are you trying to cover so he doesn't throw it to your part of the field and you give up a big play or whatever? That's where I think this game, you hope that it doesn't get away from the Packers in that regard.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with that. Uh, for the for Kyler Murray, 247 rushing yards on the season on 23 attempts. That's an average of 10.7 yards per rush he has, which is pretty insane for any sort of scrambles. Like I think that's just the way that oh, remind me of their coach's dumb name, Jonathan Gannon.
Jonathan Gannon,
Uh
Detective Jonathan Gannon.
the guy that we clowned all last year for being sort of a milk toast head coach. But I
I
think
want you to be on time. If you have to take the bus, take the bus. If you have to take the taxi, take a taxi. That was what his thing was.
um but I think like for all intents and purposes, with like drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. and the complementary receivers they have, and Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, their tight end being back, I think they're just able to run those guys deep and just let Kyler Murray take up that extra mid yardage as linebackers aren't staying home, and he's like I said, elusive enough to make those guys miss. So it, like you said, wrapping up is going to be a huge part of this game, and I hate that it's something so fundamental is going to be a big part of this because we've talked about it in the past, and I know I've talked about it at length in the past how it annoys me that at sometimes that a lot of Packers defenders just try to hit the guy down versus actually putting their arms around him and trying to tackle him, which as a guy who sits on the couch and watches the game every Sunday is easier
Rip
said
him
than
on!
done.
Come on!
Easier said than done kind of thing. I played offense when I played my couple years of football, so I can't speak too much that way. But um, I think it's a great point. Just that getting arms on Kyler Murray is going to be important and bring him down to limit those chunk plays because he can absolutely rip them. Like
Also, well,
just rip them.
along those, we're gonna get into the next point. Uh, PFF has this stat: big time throws.
Mm-hmm.
He has the most, 11 of them. He averages 8.5 air yards per attempt, which is ninth among quarterbacks. Three of his seven touchdowns have come on deep balls, so 20 yards or more.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not worrisome, he's the highest graded quarterback on passes made under pressure. So
Yeah, he's looked a lot better than like he's looked a lot like his early rookie of the year, sort of becoming an MVP candidate, Kyler Murray, than it was before he tore his ACL.
yeah, like this is not the stagnated Kyler Murray. I think a lot of it, I think part of it too, this is the other thing that I found. 30, he has the fourth highest rate of play action throws, which is, I mean, why wouldn't you have that be a part of your arsenal when you have Kyler Murray under center
Yeah,
and you have a good running game? We'll get into that in a second. The threat of the run, whether it's design runs, scramble runs, or obviously, just traditional hand out the ball to like a James Conner or Trey Benson, whatever. They just have simplified the game for him. I think that's where, I know it's been a couple years since Cliff Kingsbury has been there, but it just felt like that era or phase of Kyler Murray really just kind of timed out. Like everything met its end,
yep,
whether it needed to meet its end with his ACL tear or not. I think that's just where it was trending towards.
yeah,
And obviously, look at where Kingsbury is right now in Washington, and Jaden Daniels is his new toy to play with.
yep.
But I just
Hilariously, a
feel
very
like
similar quarterback.
Yeah,
Not
very similar
not in
quarter. Like
not in stature, but in play style.
play style for sure. It's just that dual threat of guys that can just make explosive play. He's an offense unto himself, whether it's play designs or just playing backyard football. You know what I mean? Like that is kind of what where Kyler Murray's returned to, and obviously being healthy helps that way. But I think part of it is just the you mentioned the guys that he could throw to. That's where kind of things fell off for kind of. That's where things definitely fell off for Arizona is that they outside of DeAndre Hopkins, they were really searching for another complement to it, whether it was Hollywood Brown a couple years ago or even that might have been last year
That
actually.
was last year. So
Um,
so Kyler Murray came into the league 2019 when
yeah,
he was not first overall. Was he first overall?
he was first overall.
Yeah, because they took Josh Rosen the year before, right? First overall.
Yeah,
Um, since then, his leading receivers on the year have been DeAndre Hopkins, and then it was Charlie Kirk after. I'm sorry, Christian Kirk after that. Charlie Kirk is a different person. Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins again. But then for the I've broken Jordan. I've absolutely broke Jordan.
there's something about the Cardinals. I was not going to mention it, but there's something about the Cardinals that break out
that
these
get the
all
worst out of me.
timers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but then last year, last year, their leading receiver was Trey McBride,
I was gonna say it was probably McBride.
which like I've been a like we'll talk about him in a little bit too, but like I've been a big fan of Trey McBride. Like I think he's gonna be a really good tight end, but if he's your leading receiver, like that's just not ideal for anybody, especially the people throwing the ball, which would have been Kyler Murray last year, as well as Josh Dobbs for the few games
Yeah, that's right.
before he came back. Don't forget Clayton Tune either. Um,
Well, Josh Dobbs, he played so well they got traded to the Vikings.
yeah,
Remember?
yeah, because the Vikings,
So
yeah,
yeah, so it was kind of again, it was a bad year for them. Everybody knew it was gonna be a lost year with Kyler being out for
mm-hmm,
half of the year, but
mm-hmm,
it was split in two where Trey McBride, him just breaking out this second half of the year, kind of just fantasy wonders.
right.
um,
But
that
like
is crazy that he was the lead receiver.
it is, but like, and it wasn't even close. Jordan, their next highest player was Hollywood Brown at 574 yards,
I
and
knew he probably didn't play all 17
he
games
played
either.
14 of them.
Yeah.
But Trey McBride played in 17 and had 825 yards. Like Trey McBride was targeted 106 times for 81 catches. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, was targeted 101 times for 51 catches. Which like it's different because Hollywood Brown was getting number one quarterback matchups all year with Josh Dobbs and company throwing to him, but I mean, like Michael Wilson, who's back this year, he's having a better year. He only had 565 yards. Rondell Moore had 352, and then Greg Dortch had 280, and then Zach Ertz had
The human
187.
Dortch.
Like, and Greg Dortch played 16 games. He started four of
Yeah.
them. He had 40 targets. Like, it's fine, but that receiver core last year was just missing a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. And then now that they have that in Marvin Harrison Jr., they're they have a real opportunity to like to get those other guys opened up a little bit against lesser cornerbacks as Marvin Harrison Jr. just attracts all the attention.
Yeah.
Um, the fourth overall pick this year, he's Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously son of Colts famous Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison. He's through 5 games. He has 17 catches on 35 targets, 279 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns, tied for second in the NFL. He has a 48.6 catch percentage. It's sixth worst in the NFL. But contrastly, he has 14 and a half air yards per target, which is sixth best in the NFL. A 37.1 tight window percentage on his 35 targets marks the highest of pass catchers this year. And so Kyler is going to keep throwing to him. He's just going to, because he's an absolutely enormous uh, wide receiver, 6'4", 205 pounds, like a guy that can really just go get the ball, and probably one of the best wide receiver um, prospects we've seen in a couple years, at least since Jamar Chase came out. And so limiting him is going to be obviously very important and yet very hard at the same time, especially if Jair is out. I think if Jair is out, it's going to be really hard to figure out a game plan for Marvin Harrison Jr. because I don't think Stokes is really up to the task as much as I don't want to rag on a guy. I just don't think he is. And so, I mean, even Jair is at 5'10 is a problem. He's 6 inches shorter than Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got to throw it up to him and kind of pray that he catches it, which he pretty much can. So I would anticipate a lot of over the top help from Xavier McKinney, a lot of over the top help
Yep.
from Evan Williams if he plays, or Javon Bullard. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of shading towards Marvin Harrison's side of the field, which will be helpful because, like I said, he's a tough guy to cover, especially deep if you've got one-on-one man coverage on him. But it could be a game where they just decide not to throw deep to their guys and avoid Xavier McKinney to get stuff over the middle because you don't need to have well, Xavier McKinney and company can't really come down on a guy that quickly if he's doing 7 yard slant routes and just has a much bigger catch radius than Jair or any other cornerback that the Packers have or is able to get hands on him for.
No, I think that is the key is that with Marvin Harrison being this, clear deep ball threat for Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray is going to uncork some big passes down the field. Xavier McKinney is going to be huge. This is where, we were talking about it after the Rams game, but he was saying Matthew Stafford was looking off some passes because Xavier McKinney is right there. Well, does Kyler Murray want to kind of test him out a little bit? How much of that, the X effect, as I'm calling it, exists with someone like Kyler Murray who might be willing to play with more risks, especially coming into Lambeau and you want to get a win. You know, that's
Right.
going to be very interesting to see. And I think even with Marvin Harrison Jr., like it's not been a perfect rookie season. Um, some of those numbers you mentioned, like the catch percentage is pretty terrible. He's had a couple nasty drops. Week one, obviously, was kind of a weird start to his NFL career, but he's already so huge or such a big link in their offense that if you have to game plan to take him away, well, what are the other guys going to be doing? What is Trey McBride going to be doing? Michael Wilson's been
Mm-hmm.
kind of turning it on as the
Mm-hmm.
season's gone on.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be covering him? Like, that's where I think, as we mentioned with just the supporting cast around Kyler Murray, I think that is could be really worrisome. Is that that's improved. If you don't have Jair, you're being tested again. This could very well look like how it did against Minnesota,
Yeah.
where you're so worried about Justin Jefferson, you're so worried about Justin Jefferson that he ends up with a fine day, but other guys are making plays. Jordan Addison gets a touchdown. The
Michael Wilson.
Michael Wilson, or well, like tight end, I think for the Vikings scored a touchdown that game too. Like
Oh yeah.
you're so worried about taking the big deep threat or the number one wide receiver that the other guys are going to profit off of that. So yeah, I think this is going to be this might be the biggest test of the. Nah, no, not definitely not compared to Philadelphia, but Arizona is building something, and
For the sexy little
they might
Cardinals,
not
according to Ty Windish.
sexy little Cardinals. May not be as experienced as like Philadelphia's wideouts are
Mm-hmm.
pass catchers, but they have at least guys 1 through 4 that you have to be like, you can't just be like, no, we got the guy, we have the people that can shut them down and blank them out. It's like that's not how it's gonna work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think comparing it to the Vikings game is a really good point. To where that just might be how they get beat this week if they do get beat. But like the Cardinals coming into the year, I don't think anyone really expected to be super duper good. Like there's definitely questions about their defense. They give up a lot of points, and so
Brother.
brother, and so it very well could just be a shootout too, and a matchup of two high powered offenses, which would be really fun. Um, but I think to your point, if they worry too much about Marvin Harrison Jr., there's other talented guys on this team that can beat you, like Trey McBride. Like I'm not we're gonna talk about him right now, and I'm not trying to hammer home just sort of how high I am on him, but he's darn good. He's Kyler Murray's safety valve first and foremost. 30 targets, 20 catches, 170 yards. Has not had a touchdown yet this year, and has missed one game due to a concussion. Uh, his target share at 30% ranks 12th in the NFL, and making sure that he's accounted for in just like the check down game or short passes over the middle is going to be very important because like in typical tight end fashion, he's going to chip Rashawn Gary, he's going to chip Preston or whoever off the edge, and then leak out for a block, and then but he'll line up to block somebody, and just like Tucker Kraft did last week, he'll just kind of burst out over the middle and uh, can catch yards that or can catch passes that way too. Like I think comparing him to like the way Tucker Kraft is used in the Packers offense is a
Yes.
very apt comparison, and so uh, he's gonna be a guy to watch out for. I think this is going to be, like you said, a real test of how good this Packers defense can be, um, discipline wise, as well as limiting big plays. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, anyways, as well, because the Cardinals, spoiler, also have a lot of really big plays. Um, but if they can, like, I don't want to say get dink and dunked because, like, that's not fun to watch either. But if they can do that and then just hold them to 3 points in the red zone, or not, or stop them from scoring touchdowns on every drive, that'll be obviously very important. Take away the stuff over the top, keep Kyler Murray and company, I guess, limited to short and middle throws versus big stuff over the top. Because like you had said with how much Kyler Murray is throwing the ball downfield and getting all those yards on deep passes, that's not a recipe for success. Like momentum is very obviously a thing in the NFL, and those big huge passes and big gains do a lot for having a young offensive team like the Cardinals are get going and get on a roll.
I think the biggest thing for this Packers team, especially with someone as big of a target as Trey McBride is to Kyler Murray, is this linebacker core when they, as Jeff Hafley has been more apt to using blitzes to pressuring quarterbacks more than just for the defensive front. That's when we've seen. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper's just shoots out like a freaking cannon. Quay Walker has the same capabilities too. Like those guys are really at their best, just getting downhill and just running after quarterbacks. They don't have to think; they could just go. Now with a kind of this underneath route like McBride or someone that kind of doesn't run into his route, does a little chip block, and then give him a couple seconds, and you have this wide open, window to get the ball thrown to you. I just think that puts them, the linebacker core specifically, in an uncomfortable position. You're relying a lot more on your four-man front, who, you don't have your leading sacker with Devontae Wyatt, possibly, probably. Puts even more pressure on Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Enagbari, Lucas Van Ness to make plays off the edge. Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Kenny Clark. We're going to expect more from you. Like, that's where I think between the Vikings game and especially as the Eagles game went along, even with all the stuff that happened and they're playing in Brazil and all that stuff, that was a very like, okay, we're just going to try to cover. We're not going to give up big plays, but they ended up giving up big plays because of how their tackling was that game. But I think that is my biggest worry is that the field might be so spread thin that you're relying on the first four guys to get home and get after Kyler Murray. And we're not even talking about what he could do if he's outside the pocket, even though we already have talked about it. There's just so many different ways that I can see this defense as much as it's kind of, I'm a little bit bullish on where it's heading. It all it takes is one performance to be like, well, that's not good. Yeah, I mean, I think your point about at, even if the Cardinals keep marching down the field, executing the red zone, just getting points on the board besides field goals.
Mm-hmm.
If the Packers can limit them from doing that, that would be a win in itself. Like,
Yeah.
I think this game is going to be high powered,
Yeah.
big time.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a 30s type game. This could even be 40s if both defenses are just completely neutralized.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I think it has potential to be a shootout, but also like if they're marching down the field, they need to like, as weird as it is, either just let them march down the field or like get them stops on like third and like or go 3 and out. Because I think the
Yeah,
problem is that when the Packers then get on offense, they can't go 3 and out. They can't lose the time of possession battle again like they were in the first half of the Rams game. Um, Before we get to the Cardinals defense, we should talk about their run game. James Conner, former Pittsburgh Steeler, had a down couple of years, but is now really back with it. 83 carries, 379 rushing yards for 3 touchdowns so far this year. His 91 touches ranked seventh in the NFL. James Conner has 12 runs of 10 yards or more, which is third in the NFL, and 26 yards of 26 runs of 10 yards or more is third in the league. Or no, that's two different stats. My apologies. Regardless, um, Arizona has 5.5 rushing yards per play. That's third in the NFL as well. Uh, 2.36 rushing yards per carry before contact. That's pretty darn good. That's a lot of holes being opened up on the line for them, as well as just getting yards at the line of scrimmage. Like we said, 136 scramble yards for Kyler Murray, only second behind Jaden Daniels. So if the Packers can stop the run game, Jordan, that'll be good. If they can't, it might be tough.
yeah. Not really looking forward to that. That would be pretty disastrous, especially when run defense has not been perfect by any means. Um, James Conner just seems like a kind of guy that would just find. He just feels like he's always been overlooked. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's a quality season. Like as
Right.
much as it was a down year last year, or down year before, like he did lead the league in touchdowns. Not that that's a big thing, year over year, but he has proven to be a valuable guy, and that versus someone like Kyron Williams last week, where that was a big point of emphasis going into the game. James Conner, you're obviously going to overlook versus Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, even someone like Michael Wilson. But if James Conner just turns out 5, 6 yard runs on this run defense, which is been prone to do, um, yeah, I think that would be terrible. That would be field day type stuff
It'd be
for
no
this
good,
Cardinals
some might say.
offense. That I would agree.
So, but yeah, let's hop into uh, the defense a little bit to talk about them because the Cardinals defense is how do we say not the best in their 5 games this season. They've let up 34 points, then 10 points. They lost 20-13 against the Lions, but then they gave up 42 to Jane Daniels and the Commanders, and then 23 last week to the Niners. And so, really a variety of like points allowed kind of thing. But I mean, 34 in a loss, 20 in a loss, 42 in a loss, then 23 in a win. Like their only really standout game was against the Rams, but I think that was the game that Cooper Kupp went down initially, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but other than that, 20 points in each of their games. So I mean, even then, I forget what happened to the Lions that game, but that's uncharacteristic of them for sure. So, uh, for the for the Cardinals defense, they're allowing 25.8 points per game, as we had obviously just talked about. 27th out of 32 in the NFL, giving up 6 passing TDs along with 8 rushing TDs. Uh, their 5.9 yards per play allowed is sixth worst in the NFL. Their 7.1 passing yards per play is fifth worst, and they're middle of the pack at 4.5 rushing yards per play. That way, they've allowed 147 rushing yards per game. That's fifth worst. Uh, they have 11 sacks through 5 games, 42 total pressures, which is fourth worst. And they have the second worst pressure rate on opposing quarterbacks at 25.3%. So, further, they have the worst mark in the NFL when it comes to uh, opposing quarterbacks' time to throw. 2.95 seconds passers have time to get their throw off when facing the Cardinals, and their secondary is tied for last, allowing an average target separation of 4 yards per target, meaning there's an average of 4 yards between the receiver and their cornerback when they catch the ball, which is really bad. All of that being said, Dontavian Wicks, especially that last point, might have a day today if he can get separation against these corners and actually catch the ball
They
this
can
week.
catch balls. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, this is other than that, how was the play, Mr. Lincoln? That was very much the that defense, all those uh stats and stuff. No, I think this is I've always just had this. It's been very rare when the Cardinals have been thought of as this like well-rounded team. Like when you think of the good Cardinals teams, you think of like Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald going to the Super Bowl, losing in brutal fashion against the Mike Tomlin Steelers that he's been riding on that Super Bowl for a long time.
Yep.
Um, but they've never been like a good defensive team. This is like a probably what a Big 12 type. I just associate shootout level powered offense and very little shootout allowed like defenses. Um, so yeah, the fact that they're very even with the game where they just allowed 10 points to the Rams, their defense is pretty terrible.
I mean,
Like,
even 20 to the Lions is below their average. Like
yeah,
they've allowed 35 and 42 in 2 games.
yeah, it's not great. And when you think of like Buda Baker's on this team, but jumping into what he's done this year, it's been a really rough year. Their secondary is just overall just not there. Like you
No.
don't really think of many playmakers for them. I think their leading pass rusher, if I remember, I don't even know this guy's name. I'm trying to find this stat.
You're looking for like sacks or
Um,
pressures?
Sacks.
Because it's Dennis Gardeck, their linebacker.
Could not even tell you who that
Yeah,
is.
their second most.
Not at
He
all.
has three. Their second most is former Packer Chris Barnes with two, and
Oh,
they have 6 players with one.
good for Chris.
Yeah.
Good for Chris. He's found a home. But yeah, this is just not a good defensive team,
Mm-mm.
very clearly.
Yeah,
Um,
which I'm excited about because like I can't remember the last time we saw like a true shootout, back and forth kind of shootout. And I think that'd be fun. Stress me out, but I think it'd be fun.
ooh, were there any last year?
I don't think so. Not back and forth. I don't think.
No, the
I'm
offense is
talking
not.
like remember that really, really, really good Chiefs Rams game on Sunday Night Football back in like
But that
20,
was like the
20,
most
29,
17
17? Oh my God, we're old. There's
because
no way. I'll
it
look
was
at.
Mahomes' first year as a starter, I believe.
Oh, okay, keep going with
So
your
maybe
point.
2018. But yeah, like
2018.
I think for as for as much as we hoped last week to be of like, all right, these are both or the Packers have an explosive offense. Cardinals, as we have talked about plenty, they have a very explosive offense. Even with that said, Green Bay has still shot themselves in the foot multiple times with not scoring as much as they can based on how well they move the ball and how they're getting in scoring position, but squander those chances based on penalties, turnovers, what have you, missed field goals. um, So yeah, this could be a very get right type game for the offense, and this the defense could just be hold on to your butts,
Mm-hmm.
Samuel L. Jackson gif. So that's where that's just kind of where I'm heading. I think that is my predictions and players to watch and whatever else we're going to be doing. I think we'll be informed by that.
Yeah. I mean, should we get right into it? Let's one more point. Big plays. Cardinals have a lot of them. Packers have 45.
Big plays.
Packers have 45 big plays through 5 weeks. Uh, Cardinals have 39, which is fifth. So everything we had said earlier, it shows. So
Yeah,
players to watch, Jordan. It is my turn, I think.
I can't
I
remember.
can't remember. I'll go first. Um, I'm going to go. Hmm. Now I'm stuck. I don't want to make it that simple. Uh, actually, do you have one? Because I'm broken.
I can go.
I'm broken.
Packers. I'm going to go Xavier McKinney.
Okay.
One, I want to see that interception streak go to six. Two, more importantly, I think based on secondary questions, whether even with possibility of Jair playing, I think Xavier McKinney is just going to be very important to taking away Marvin Harrison, making obviously disruptive plays, turnover type plays, and just really taking away just what I feel is, you know, that's Arizona's bread and butter. So if you can do that, that obviously neutralizes Kyler Murray in one way of how he can hurt you. Um, yeah, I think by far he's the most vital defensive player on the Packers, arguably the MVP of the season so far. So why wouldn't I go with him to hopefully take out this Cardinals offense?
I get you. I get you. I'm gonna go Quay Walker. I think whoever is spying the quarterback, I'm assuming it's gonna be Quay. It could be Adrian Cooper as well. So pick your poison on that player to watch. I think it's gonna be critically important this week because they have to be able to keep this run game in check, and they really can't do that without a spy. And so, uh, that's where I'm leading my focus. I think if they can keep Kyler Murray to not having a few of those huge uh, scrambling runs, I think they'll be okay. But if they
Mm,
if they are if they allow Kyler Murray to lead the team in rushing on Sunday, it'll be a problem.
I agree.
So conversely, I am going to go Kyler Murray for my player to watch uh, on the Arizona Cardinals for that exact reason. Because if he's having success running the ball, he's gonna be probably having success throwing the ball as well for the sole purpose of they're gonna have to send more guys to sell out for protecting against the Kyler Murray run, and that just kind of opens up the middle of the field, and the defense get kind of get gashed that way.
I'm gonna go James Conner. We didn't talk about him as great of lengths as Kyler Murray or even Marvin Harrison Jr. or even Trey McBride. But I think with so much attention dedicated to all of those three guys, James Conner just has a very easy, not easy job, but he can just go right in there and when you least expect him to make plays, just continue moving the ball. And I think if there's one thing that we cannot really trust so far with this defense is that the run game is still a problem. James Conner's not like what Saquon Barkley is or um
Jonathan Taylor.
who is the other guy? Jonathan Tate. Like he's not that as explosive of a runner, even though he's had some pretty explosive runs this year. He can still just find ways to kind of get at the gut. And I think with no Devontae Wyatt likely, that puts more pressure on Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton to take away the inside runs,
Mm-hmm.
and they might just be overtaxed by a good Cardinals offensive line that James Conner just gets a lot of push and you know gets through. So I think with all the attention going elsewhere, James Conner just might be able to rattle off a 100-yard rushing day, if not more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fantasy players. I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's gonna have a bigger day than we anticipated.
I'd like to say Jordan Love, but I feel like he's gonna have a throw that he'll want back.
I mean,
But
even
I'm gonna
last
go.
week, he had like a whole lot of points.
He did. I'm gonna go Jordan Love.
Yeah, he only had 2 touchdowns last week in the interception. He had 16 points, but then he had 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions against Minnesota had 31 points. So yeah, I think that's a fine pick against this defense. All right, predictions. I was supposed to go first, but then didn't, so I'll let you go first. Deep in thought is Jordan Tresky.
Packers 38, Cardinals 34.
Wow, close one. I'm gonna go Packers. Let's do. I'll say 38. Cardinals 31. I think they win, but I think it's gonna be quite the game.
Yeah, I'm
So,
not. I'm not confident.
as in,
My confidence level going into this game is not high.
that's what not confident means. But
Yes.
like, you're just are you like anxious or you
No, I'm
or
never anxious, but
you're
I just don't.
that's not true.
I'm never anxious. I'm
It's not true.
cool as a
That's not
cool as
true.
a
It's not
cucumber.
true.
Come on.
You've been anxious.
No,
As in, like
I just
you are
going in.
you don't know who is going to win this game, or do you like think there's a higher probability of them losing than winning?
I don't know who's going to win this game. I think this is. I I was more when we did our schedule pod and be like, give me a cupcake. And I
Yeah,
looked at Arizona
yeah,
like that's a cupcake.
totally agree.
This is not a cupcake team. The way
Exactly,
that they're
not anymore.
playing, that's not. Yeah, that's where my
Gotcha.
headspace is at.
Rather than like 70-30 win lose to like start the year, you're more at
No,
like
this is like
55 5
55,
45.
45,
God, I can read your mind.
which is I don't know if it's as much of I think it's both. I think it's a reflection of how much better the Cardinals have been to start the year, and I think it's also been how just kind of inconsistent the Packers have been.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
that's a topic for another day.
maybe even Sunday.
I dare I say yes.
All right, folks. That does it for this episode of Talk of the Tundra. Uh, Catch us back in your podcast feeds after the game on Sunday, in podcast feeds Monday morning. While you're at it, go check out the GSPN Substack. Jordan wrote a fantastic article on the Packers defensive MVP of the year thus far as Xavier McKinney. Gave some stats over there, cut some clips as well. Only $8 a month for all the written content that we provide here over at GSPN, as well as ad-free content into your RSS feeds for all the GSPN podcasts and the GSPN After Dark extra podcasts that we record every week, and those are a blast. So be sure to check those out and subscribe if you'd like to. We would appreciate it. Buck season starts in just under, I think, 10 days or two weeks, I believe. I think the 24th or the 28th, maybe, I believe is the opening tip. Uh,
I
Against the
think it's the 23rd.
23rd, just under 2 weeks then. I think against the 76ers, if I'm not mistaken, but I very well could be.
You are correct.
Um, so go check
It is
out
October 23rd, Wednesday.
Wednesday, October 23rd, so 2 weeks from yesterday. Uh, Check out the Eurostep with Ty and Rohan as they begin this season and win in six with Jordan and Adam. Um, and then go listen to the eulogy of Adam and Andrew on Cruising for a Bruising as they go over the loss to the Mets, obviously. Mets keeping the streak alive as they go into the NLCS to face either the Dodgers or the Padres, which is just great for our fandoms. But then Be sure
By
to
all means, everybody keep talking crap about Jesse Winker because
yeah.
he doesn't give a flying F.
No, he doesn't.
Sorry.
Uh but then check out Make Time for This as well with Adam and Andrew as they talk about movies. Adam, Andrew, and I are going to be hopping on that podcast very soon to talk about uh The Substance with Demi Moore and the other lady whose name I cannot remember. Um,
Other lady, Margaret Qualley.
thank you. To talk that movie and other body horror throughout movie history. I just watched The Fly for the first time last night, and that was very good. So um, be sure to keep updated all those movie stuff pods over there. So like I said, folks, go check out gspn.substack.com to subscribe. $8 a month over there, get all the extra content. Thank you for listening and being fans. We appreciate it. And Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.